I am naturally athletic. And so when I put my mind to something and I train for something, like I can really get into it. And there've been a few times I've thought, man, what if I just like totally trained and became a wrestler? Like, what if I just had a second career, just a brand new career of just being a wrestler?
I'm Will, and I love wrestling. And I love talking about wrestling. I've been doing it for over 15 years. And I love talking about wrestling with other people who love talking about wrestling. It's probably my favorite thing in the world. You know what another one of my favorite things is? Boy Meets World. Probably seen every episode 1,000 times. One of the main reasons why? Today's guest. You know her and love her just as well as I do. She's Danielle Fishel Karp, famous for her role as Topanga in Boy Meets World and subsequently Girl Meets World, and also a big fan of pro wrestling. And we sat down and we had a chat about it. And if you like this conversation and want to hear more, be sure to hit like and subscribe down below, and I'll continue doing more of these as the year rolls on. It's actually one of my New Year's resolutions. But for now, enjoy. And ladies and gentlemen, it's the one and only Danielle Fishel Karp.
Hello.
Hello. She is multi-talented actress and director. And you know, it's funny, when I told my family this past week that we were doing this interview, I came in the room and I said, I'm doing an interview with Danielle Fishel next week. I kid you not. My daughter goes, oh, I know her. She directs on Raven's Home. Because that is her favorite show. And I kid you not. And I thought that was interesting because like I said, to her credit, it's her favorite show. She knows everything about it.
But still, the fact that she knows who the directors of Raven's Home are, that's pretty
when your name comes across the bottom, and that is the name she knows, but that's what she knows it for. And I thought about that as I was preparing for this interview, and I thought that there's a generation of kids who are going to know you for almost a different line of work than my generation does, that's going to know you as that face behind the camera. So I don't know. I thought that was a little cool.
I think it's very cool. That's actually one of my favorite, being recognized stories now. Because it's, first of all, having been on Boy Meets World and being known as Topanga. Topanga is such a unique name that I never could expect somebody to remember Danielle Fishel. That's not a name people are going to ever know, but people know me as Topanga. So the fact that you said Danielle Fishel and she was like, I know that name, that's very cool. I like that.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I'm one of those people who I'm probably in the rarity because I grew up in San Fernando Valley, or at least that's where I was born. So when Boy Meets World first came out and the name Topanga hit, my brain went oh, Topanga Plaza. That's I always associated the name with that area and everything along those lines. But now, it's a household name. If anybody says Topanga, there's only one thing anybody thinks of, and that is you.
And the name did come from Topanga Canyon. So,
well, there we go.
You knew it for exactly the right reason.
Right. So of course, this is a wrestling show. I know wrestling. I love wrestling. Everybody knows that about me. I've been watching it my entire life, but your relationship with wrestling is a little bit different than most people's. You, of course, as I mentioned, came to be a household name via the character of Topanga on Boy Meets World. And I believe there were 2 episodes of that show, if I remember correctly, and I'm acting like I haven't seen every episode of that show a million times. But there are 2 episodes of that show that featured pro wrestlers. And one very famously featured Frankie Stechino and his dad in the show, the late great Big Van Vader, and Corey having to go through the hijinks of being with Topanga and also being with Frankie. So prior to that, had you had much knowledge or experience with pro wrestling?
No, not at all. We were lucky enough to have Vader there with us, but then we also had Mick Foley on Boy Meets World as well. And so, but doing those episodes was my first real experience with professional wrestling. I think I was, I'm about the same age as Topanga was throughout the course of the show. And so I think I was around 16 when we did that Sweet 16 episode, that we filmed in the ring and all of that. And I remember going to the show, and I know they filmed it. People are going to kill me because I should know this by now. Mark Blutman knows it. He wrote the episode. But it was filmed during an actual wrestling event. I don't remember what that wrestling event was, but we were there to tape, like kind of almost like the people that were in the audience, you know, Corey and Sean, when they're running down and they started yelling at them. And I remember being there and like just feeling what it felt like to be at a wrestling event and being so overwhelmed, like, whoa, what is this? But also feeling like a real part of the community. And it was my first experience with one of my favorite things about wrestling, which is that, like, you know, the chants that the audience knows and the things that they yell. And it's like that real community feeling. Everybody seemed to know the chants. And I was like, how does everybody know what to say? You know? So I remember that was really my first experience with it.
Okay. And then you went to Wrestlemania after that.
I did. So then after Boy Meets World, well, toward the end of Boy Meets World and after Boy Meets World ended, I dated somebody who was a huge wrestling fan. And so with him, I went to Raw and I went to Wrestlemania. And
do you remember which Wrestlemania? I'm guessing it would have been 16. Was it?
I can tell you it was probably 1999.
99. So, okay, so the question would have been, because 99 would have been in Philadelphia, so 16 was in Anaheim.
Oh, then that's probably that's the one.
Yeah,
would have
so
been,
I figured that was
2000.
2000, yeah, WrestleMania 2000. Yeah, that was main event was Triple H versus The Rock versus Big Show versus Mick Foley. Yes. The main event. Yeah.
Yes. The best.
Did you go to the Raw after that?
Yes.
Okay. What happened at that? Yeah. Sorry.
We could find footage of it. I'm probably like, I don't remember if we were on the camera side or not, but I do know we had really good seats, and I was like, I can hear what they're saying inside the ring. Like I can hear the things they're saying to each other.
Nice. So that's like where you became a fan, essentially.
Yes, I was definitely a fan by then. And I have said this before, but I still think it's just kind of funny. But the reason I can raise one eyebrow is because of The Rock. I was a huge Rock fan.
I think that's all of us.
All of us can, yeah. I went, so shortly after becoming a huge wrestling fan and becoming a really huge Rock fan, I did like a TV movie.
That's right.
And I was sitting in, it was called Rocket's Red Glare. And I was sitting in the hair and makeup chair. And I kept trying to, like, how do you raise an eyebrow? I kept like looking at myself and I couldn't do it. And I think it was either Mary Lou Henner who said it to me, or it was the makeup artist. But someone in the room with me said, oh, if you want to train a muscle to do something, you just have to stare at that muscle and tell it to do that over and over again. And just look at it and really say, like, raise. And I was like, wow, is that true? And so every day when I was in hair and makeup, that's what I would do for the time it took to get my makeup done. And eventually I could raise my eyebrow, and it's never gone away.
It's great. So am I remembering correctly? Because you mentioned made for TV movies, and that had me thinking about a TV movie The Rock did in, I think I wasn't say like 98, 99, that you were in, if I remember correctly.
I don't think so.
I think so. And I'm drawing a blank on this, and now I'm going to feel like an idiot if I don't look this up.
Look it up. I don't think so. I think I would remember that. I'd have met him once. And I think it was there was a show in Canada called The Deanie Petty Show. And I did that show a couple of times, and The Rock may have been on that one with me, or it was, I'm trying to remember, it was some other talk show maybe, but he was also a guest on the show. And I was like, I've never been
found it. The movie Long Shot, starring, and you were in it, The Rock was a mugger in that movie. I knew I wasn't crazy.
Wait a minute.
Yes.
What?
Yeah, okay. It was one of those things where I was like, there's no way my memory's deceiving me on this. But it was actually his first acting credit. Dwayne Johnson was a mugger in the movie Long Shot that also starred Danielle Fishel.
Whoa. That is so crazy. I did not know that. I cannot believe you just told me that. This is the first time knowing anything about that. That is amazing.
Yeah, I don't. You mentioned that, and I just thought I remember there being a movie that had Danielle Fishel and The Rock in it,
That is
And
so funny. I love that. I mean, now that's like my favorite credit. And I had completely forgotten about that movie entirely. And now I mean, The Rock's first movie ever, and I was in it.
yes, you were.
Oh, that's amazing. That is
So,
amazing.
so hey, big revelations here on Wrestling with Will.
I love it.
So did you maintain your fandom pretty much from then on? Did you stay loyal to
No.
WWF or?
No, it was like an in and out thing for me. I actually really like fell out entirely for many, many years. And then I would know stuff that was going on. I would hear about it. I would watch occasionally, but like did not maintain a strict fandom for all those years. And then when my husband, Jensen, and I started dating in 2017, he has been for his entire life since he was a little kid. I think he's very much like you, a major wrestling fan.
That
And
much I do know.
you know, the with in the most loving and respectful terms, the biggest wrestling nerd, a la you. They also said it in the most respectful and loving terms. So just something he loves. He loves the history of, knows all the wrestlers and characters and storylines and all that kind of stuff.
He got to
Um,
add to the history of, by the way.
Oh yeah, I mean he wrote for WWE for it was not an incredibly long period of time, and not necessarily some of his most favorite memories. It's a hard place to work, but he contributed a lot, and he still talks about it all the time. And but yeah, so when we started dating in 2017, he was going to the PWG shows, which he had been going to since their inception. And so we didn't live terribly far from Reseda, and that's where PWG took place. And so he said to me one day, he was like, "Yeah, you want to go to this wrestling show with me?" And in my head, having no idea what I was in for, I was picturing like a Raw or a WrestleMania,
Right.
or something like that. And he did say, it's very small. It's really cool. It's really cool, but also it's going to be very hot in there, and it's a totally different experience than what you're used to. And I was still thinking, yeah, how different could it be? And then we got there, and it was this tiny little room that's 1,000 degrees. Have you been?
Yeah. So I haven't been specifically to a PWG show, but it was funny you mentioned 2017. Okay, because I'm trying to think of what was going on in PWG at that time, because my cousin wrestled 2 PWG shows in 2017, and so this is one of those like, oh no, was she there like at that time, kind of things.
Leo Rush that's where I met Leo Rush,
Right.
and became his kind of number one fan.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, so you had never been to a PWG show, but your cousin has. But you're obviously super familiar with it.
Yes, very familiar with PWG.
Okay. And so anybody who's been or knows the history of it, it is definitely its own thing. It's its own beast. And we went, and I had a very similar feeling to the way I felt when we shot that Boy Meets World episode. And I felt like it was my first time being a part of something like that. And it was so cool. And it totally revived the things I had originally loved about wrestling. It felt new. It felt different. I was obsessed again with all the chants, and when people, the things that they would say, and the way they would tease the refs, and how everybody knew who everyone was and what all the storylines were. And I said to Jensen, I was like, how do they all know this? And he said, it's just, it's a fandom. You come back every week or as many weeks as you can, and you become a part of this community. And it kind of right there, PWG is what revived my love for wrestling.
That's amazing, especially considering that so many names have come through PWG. And to the point of where, I mean, PWG's presence is felt all across wrestling television now. So like being there in 2017, I imagine, and seeing the names that were there at that time, and now all of a sudden, you look at across NXT, Raw, SmackDown, AEW, you're seeing, I mean, you listen to AEW commentary, there's Excalibur right there, like, across the board, PWG's presence is felt. So I imagine that probably helped keep your fandom going into today.
It did, yeah. In 2017 and then 2018, when we'd get word that, somebody was moving up, that somebody was going
Mm-hmm.
from PWG and had now been called in and to NXT or to, now AEW or, whatever it was, it would be like, oh, wow. And then I would then pay attention to where they went and what they were doing there. And it kind of got me, I'm a much bigger fan of AEW than I am currently of WWE.
Me too, by the way.
Okay, great. I love that. Yeah, I think the things that AEW is doing is, I just think it's more interesting. I find the relationships and the storylines and the characters to be, just, I don't know, they're engaging. And
I completely agree. I think that, I think it's a show that, in a way, like for people who don't get it, it almost, it's almost like I feel like they're not paying enough attention, because I feel like it's one of those shows that in so many different ways rewards you for being a viewer because so many things connect. I give Tony Khan a lot of credit in the way that he, almost long-term plans and pays attention to things. And it's little things like I think about how, at All Out, when Kenny Omega, walked out on Adam Page, but the way he did it, he walked through that corridor and backstage, and he was headed toward his car and got in, and he told the Young Bucks, you better get in with me now, because once I go down this road, never coming back again. And that was 2 months before he wins the title and does that exact same thing where he walks down that exact corridor with Don Callis. And it's like little things like that they pay attention to. I really appreciate. I've been accused of being on the AEW payroll because I'm such a because I'm always like a big staunch defender of the things they do. But I really enjoy it as a promotion as well.
Yeah. I agree with you.
So, it's funny that, because it always amazes me that you have become such a fan in recent years, because everybody in the wrestling industry, it feels like, is a fan of you. And it's like when you hear from, you did the appearance on the New Day podcast, Dawson Creed, and he got to geek out over you. And then, Max Caster name dropped you in his rap, in his match right before, or he name dropped Topanga, but I mean, give or take, but, he name dropped Topanga, in that promo with, right before his match with the Young Bucks. And you tweeted almost immediately after that, so I'm like, she's watching live, isn't she? So how do you, I guess, almost, I can't imagine wrapping your head around the fact that it's almost like a two-way street of fandom, that it's like you're a fan of these guys that you watch, but they're a big fan of you.
It's cool because, it's not, it's not every day that totally different worlds are fans of each other.
Right.
It's not rare if another actor you meet is like, oh my gosh, I love your work. Like it's known that we're kind of supposed to be up on each other's work and see what people are doing. But the fact that these wrestlers, these athletes that I admire so much, and that put their bodies through so much, and that do something totally different than what I am capable of doing, also know the work that I have done, and the fandom is equal, is really cool, because it seems almost as like, how do these two worlds connect really at all, with the exception of the fact that they're incredible performers. In that sense, it's all a performance, and aren't we all kind of, actors are performing and they're performing, but they're obviously athletes as well. So yeah, it's cool. It's nice. And I have always kept in touch with Mick Foley. And so Mick and I have been friends over the years. And, I've reached out to him occasionally. We've seen each other at different Comic-Cons and stuff. So yeah, it's nice. It's a very respectful fandom. I so respect what they do, and everybody has been so unbelievably kind and generous and wonderful to me, and welcomed me into the community. It's a great group of people.
Yeah. And speaking of which, just because I just got a press release yesterday, that AEW is doing the AEW Dynamite Awards, on January 27th, and as they were listing the presenters, I happened to notice one Danielle Fishel Karp and Jensen Karp will be presenting awards.
Yes.
I was very honored that they asked us to do that. Jensen got the email and he was like, hey, guess what? They asked us to present an award. And I was like, when? When do we get to do it? Yeah, I was really excited.
Nice. Do you know what award you get to present?
Yes, we're presenting Breakout Male and Female.
Ooh, exciting.
Yeah, very exciting.
All right. I actually just voted in those. So we'll.
Do you mind? Are you allowed to say who you voted for?
Oh,
Or no?
sure. I gave Breakout Male to. Honestly, I had to think about it, but really my answer is John Silver.
Okay.
I was like, Darby's an easy pick, but I really feel like, Darby's there. But at the same time, like John Silver was one of those names that I really hadn't seen much work of prior to AEW. And even when he got signed, I thought, what's he got to offer? I wasn't really sure, but I swear nobody makes me laugh more than he does. And then when he has those like impressive feats of strength in the ring where like he's not big in stature, but he's big in build. And then there are just certain things he pulls off that just amaze me. And it's amazing how the more AEW starts to trickle crowds back in, how much the crowds are into him. In that battle royal they did at Winter is Coming, which I think up until the Brody Lee show was the largest crowd they had. The fact that they were all in that battle royal, so many guys they had in there, and they're chanting Johnny Hungy, and I thought this is a guy who really didn't even get to do much prior to the pandemic, but now that he is in there, he just gets to do it. And then there's Hikaru Shida, who I think just was initially flying under the radar, but was racking up all those wins. And that's one of those things I appreciate about AEW, in that you don't necessarily realize how important having the wins and losses are until somebody's suddenly on a 21 match winning streak and you're like, and hasn't lost any. And I think Hikaru Shida is one of the people to truly benefit from that, because she was just winning left and right. And then all of a sudden you're seeing it on your screen and you think, I think she's onto something. And then she won the title, and I've been really happy with her work. And I know the women's division tends to be a point of critique among AEW fans, without necessarily recognizing what made a good women's division. Like thinking about the work that WWE had to put in for years. But that's my answer.
Good, great.
And you get to present those. That's so cool.
And I get to present them. I know. What's funny is that I don't know the winners. They gave us the cards, and all of the names were on the cards, and we had to do it as if they, one by one, as if they all won, because they don't. So they're taking it very seriously, because I honestly do not know who won.
That's excellent.
So it'll be exciting for us to see it as well.
Do you ever envision yourself wanting to be maybe on that side just a little bit, of maybe at least working an angle one or two times? I see a smile. I feel like you at least consider it.
Would. Yeah, I definitely would. I would definitely be open to it. It's something Jensen and I have talked about. I mean, if it weren't for the fact that I thought, like, man, because I love athletics. I'm not currently in any sort of athletic shape. I have really, outside of taking my dog for a walk, I have not done anything athletic in a really long time, but I am naturally athletic. And so when I put my mind to something and I train for something, like I can really get into it. And there've been a few times I've thought, man, what if I just like totally trained and became a wrestler? Like, what if I just had a second career, just a brand new career of just being a wrestler? And then I thought, oh my gosh, my body would hate me. Like I'm going to be 40 this year. I don't know if that's the time to decide I'm going to start wrestling, but would it be fun to be like a manager or, yes, I would love to do something like that.
Tony Khan, if you're watching, Danielle, she's right here.
I mean, I would do it in a heartbeat.
Awesome. So just a couple of rapid fire questions. Because at this point you've gotten to attend a number of shows. What's your favorite match you've seen live?
Oh man, that's a really tough one. I mean, that Wrestlemania I went to that I didn't remember any of the details of because I have a terrible memory, but 16, seeing The Rock. I think seeing The Rock live was my favorite thing ever, just because that was that, again, it was the first wrestler I was like, I chose to be a fan of, you know, it was like, once I started watching myself and I was like, oh, I get it. I understand now what makes people love this. I'm a fan of this person. Seeing him live was amazing at WrestleMania 16. With that said, I had that kind of similar feeling when I went to PWG and I saw Lio Rush. And I was like, it was my first PWG show. And he's so athletic and so acrobatic, and seeing him jump off the ropes. And I was just like, yep, I'm a fan of this person. So those are my two favorites, not because they were necessarily, you know, not because necessarily anything about them was so super memorable, but just that I had that feeling of like, I'm in. I know I like this. I am now a fan. And that's a good feeling for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I always say that the best wrestling to me is when you have those times. 'Cause I remember I was at a show in 2013, and it was the first time I realized how much I like truly love like Daniel Bryan, because he is another one of those guys who, when he initially came out that night, there wasn't a huge reaction for him, but he has that ability to pull the crowd into his matches with his work, and the more he did, the more the crowd was into it, to the point of where by the time the match was over, everybody was on their feet, everybody was screaming crazy, and you know, that was the moment I realized that, like, that to me is those are my favorite live wrestling experiences, are when you can get sucked into it via whatever the performer is doing without necessarily having preconceived notions going into it. So yeah, I can imagine that about The Rock, especially because I imagine being at WrestleMania, and again, you talked about the crowd knowing chants and knowing what to do and all of that. The Rock, of course, like, you know, he invented the sing-along, right? Like,
exactly.
So, you know, he has that promo right before his match, I do remember, and so you got to be there for the entire "If You Smell What the Rock Is Cooking" and hearing the crowd going nuts for it.
Yeah, it's the best. I love people who are great on the mic and great in the ring, you know, like CM Punk is like that. CM Punk's one of those guys that like just is so, the minute he has the mic in his hand, The Rock was that way too. There's so many people that are like that, but once the mic was in his hand and he's talking, and it's just like this commanding presence and you're paying attention to every word. Like I love that.
Awesome. Favorite entrance?
Favorite entrance. Oh gosh.
Are you digging Jungle Boy's new entrance so far?
Oh, I am. Actually, that's great. I love Jungle Boy. Greatest hair in wrestling. Yeah, I think he's fantastic. I also love Orange Cassidy. I love the gimmick. I love the not caring. I think coming up with something that's really truthfully never been seen before is rare. And I just think he's done it. So I'm a big Orange Cassidy fan too.
I love Orange Cassidy. You know, it's funny. He had one of those characters that the first time I saw it was at an indie show in New York 2 years ago. It was before AEW, and I didn't get it at all.
Yeah.
But the crowd was so into it that it was one of those things that I was just kind of paying attention to, and then I found out that he was Fire Ant and Chikara, and so like that changed a lot of things because I didn't know that. But seeing how into it people were, and then when I went to my first AEW show and I was seeing people dressed up as him, I realized how captivating it was. And then I went to a show, I think 6 months later. It was the second to last show before the pandemic. So it was the second to last show with fans. Okay. And the amount of kids dressed up as Orange Cassidy, and I realized that he is truly onto something.
Yes.
And so that I have to give him all the credit in the world. I think it is. And he makes me laugh. He very much makes me laugh.
And that's the thing. I think what the reason he's onto something is, you know, for as many different types of characters as there are, at a certain point, similar to TV show ideas, and almost everything has been done before. And I don't think what he's doing had ever been done. I really think it was something totally new. And so even though for people like you and I who are older and remember, well, actually you're significantly younger than I am, but it may not be
significantly. I'm 34, ma'am.
Okay. Still 5 years is significantly younger, but okay. I just didn't want to insult you by dragging you into my almost 40 territory. But it is one of those things where you go, oh, he's not doing that necessarily for me. We're, of The Rock, and we like the big and the over the top and all that stuff. That's normally what's shiny to us. But it's so new. And I can see how, exactly like you said, it speaks to the new generation of wrestling fans, which I just think is spectacular.
Well, Danielle, it has been an absolute pleasure having you here and getting to pick your brain about pro wrestling. I've actually always wanted to do this. So I am very honored that you chose to be on Wrestling with Will. And yeah, is there anything you want to plug going out?
No, but thank you so much for having me. I really appreciated you asking, and I was happy to do this with you. And, if you ever want to have Jensen on, Jensen would really be... Jensen would be the real good interview for this kind of stuff.
Are you kidding me? I have so much I want to ask Jensen about, because for people wanting to know when this is being recorded, literally last night live on RBR, we were talking about there was a news story that had come out, and somehow in a roundabout way we ended up talking about Candice Michelle and Vince McMahon. And after we were done with the show, I thought about that, and remembering I had this interview to do today, I was like, Jensen wrote that. Or at least he had, it wasn't that he wrote it, but I remember that he had very specific input on that. And the very storyline, the very segment we were talking about was the one where he got his first word introduced into the WWE lexicon. And so it was just kind of funny that came up literally yesterday.
Last night, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, he's a really good wrestling interview. I'm a little tougher because I love it, but I'm not watching every single week. I don't follow it incredibly like to the detail closely. I know the people that I like. I keep up with the storylines. I follow a lot of it on Twitter. But Jensen's right there in it.
Yes. Well, he'll be the next one I go after. Thank you so much, Danielle.
Thank you,
really
Bill.
appreciate it.
Bye.
What a fun chat. Not gonna lie, those of you that know me know that my memory tends to be my bread and butter. So I nearly had a panic attack when I thought I was wrong about The Rock being in the movie Long Shot. But alas, Steel Trap doesn't fail me. Anyway, again, be sure to hit like and subscribe for more content. I've got more interviews on the way that I'm really excited about. I've got more editions of Wrestling with My Friends coming up, and just more content. I want to say thank you again to my guest, the amazingly lovely and talented Danielle Fishel Karp. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, peace.